and welcome everyone to another episode of my weird little podcast. We have Teresa in
Hi.
Acton, California,
Yay.
and we have me, Tia, here in Las Vegas, Sin City. What are other nicknames for Las Vegas?
Um, Sin City is the big one, of course.
Yeah,
Oh gosh.
we have this area called, the nickname is Naked City, because back in the 50s, that's where showgirls would sunbathe on their roofs, because that was like the residential area closest to
Okay.
the entertainment area.
Hmm.
It's the area around the stratosphere if you ever visit, but it's also the most dangerous part of Las Vegas. So be careful.
Yeah.
It has the most crime. Like most of the crime in the city happens behind the stratosphere. So yeah, just
Wow.
letting if you go to the stratosphere, uh go during the day. Um, what other nicknames? Are there any other nicknames?
I know, like I'm just trying to think of some. I mean, gosh, I can't think of any.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously it's a gambling town,
Oh
more
yeah.
than anything else.
Pat, would you say gambling town? That's true.
Yeah.
Pat said Glitter Gulch, which is actually true. So
Oh,
Fremont
right.
Street
Okay.
used to be known as Glitter Gulch. There was a strip club out there called Glitter Gulch during the 80s, but it was known that prior because all of the original casinos were all Western themed, and they
Right.
had uh flashy incandescent light bulbs that looked glittery,
Oh,
like the
okay.
big
Yeah.
marquee signs that were
Yeah.
glittery. Um, so yes, Glitter Gulch,
Hmm.
that is correct.
All
Oh,
I can
city
think
that never
of,
sleeps.
oh, well, yeah, but that's been said also about New York City, right? Like Manhattan, I don't know, maybe Los Angeles, but
Yeah.
I don't know.
I,
But yeah, you could go with that one too.
I definitely sleep because I was asleep up until 2:15,
Oh.
with us needing to record our podcast at 2:30. um, so well, I have a
Nice.
very light amount of makeup on my face and pajama bottoms on underneath this shirt. And I put on earrings like I had gotten up today and did something,
Yeah.
like I was like, uh, you know, the more makeup you wear, the less tired you normally look, and the more
Yeah.
you kind of make it appear like you put yourself together. So yeah, I did put earrings on, even though I'm wearing pajama bottoms under this. But who knows? Um,
That's all right.
yeah, yeah. Anyways,
Oh,
yeah, let's get into what we're talking about today. I don't know what we're
okay.
talking about. Actually, you're surprising
Oh,
me
you're
with a
right.
story, and I
Yes.
love surprises so much. No, I hate surprises.
Well,
I don't
yeah.
like getting surprise presents. I don't like going surprise places. But surprise podcasts are cool. This is awesome
Yeah.
because I get to sleep
Yeah.
for 15 minutes before we do this. Um,
You're right. You're right.
although the
Yeah.
rest of my day
Well,
is devoted to
yeah.
figuring out what our next podcasts are going to be on. So that is
Okay.
today. But yeah, anyways, surprise me.
Well, that's good though. Yeah. Okay. Surprise you. Yes. Well, I mean, if you're gonna be asking me for things that I am interested or want to talk about on the podcast, my memory is gonna go back to a certain town sometimes. That town I know and love that I was born and raised in, Chicago, Illinois. So I have, yeah, there are so many ghost stories out of Chicago, many that I've shared already with us on different podcasts, on this one and our other podcasts. But not specifically that it had to be a ghost story, of course. But when I was thinking of things like I hadn't talked about that I would like to talk about, this story came to my mind. And also, I was kind of reminded of it in different weird ways that I'll get into in a minute. share briefly with you. So today I am going to be we're taking it to Chicago, Illinois, like I said, and we're going to be talking about the mysterious murder of Teresita Basa and how her ghost perhaps solved the crime of who killed her. So yeah, it's one of these stories that, like I said, I've been thinking about for a while in the back of my mind, because for anybody out there that watch Unsolved Mysteries, and if you're listening to our podcast, you probably love Unsolved Mysteries, like most of us do. The original series with Robert Stack, of course, from the 80s and 90s. So
I literally watch it every day.
It's so good.
That's not even an exaggeration. I watch it every day. I like going to sleep. That's what I put on to go to sleep.
Yeah.
You know.
Well,
yeah.
I don't blame you. I mean, its voice scares the hell out of some people, obviously. To me, I do find it very soothing as well. So
the only problem is, like, when I'm like right about to fall asleep and then I hear something that I'm like, oh, that would make a good podcast. I either have to hope that I remember it when I wake up, or I have to like get on my phone and then I see what time it is. Then I see how late it is, and then I get on my phone and I have to type it in, and then I have like a whole anxiety attack for an hour, and
right.
So
yeah, I hear you. Like, there's a lot to be interested in the world of Unsolved Mysteries, right? So like I said, this one stuck out to me because I actually remember seeing the original episode when it aired. And for those out there who are curious when it was, to be precise, it was April 25th, 1990, when the episode first aired. So for me, I would have been, let's see, like about 9, 10 years old at that time. So just goes to show you, I've been interested in this stuff for a long time. I had no problem watching the Unsolved Mysteries, even though it was scary and creepy, and I probably should have been scared out of my mind. I was some of the time, to be honest, but I still kept watching. So nonetheless, I just want to share with you guys right now that I have the DVD. This is the DVD collection of Ghosts Volume 1, purchased at Best Buy for apparently $19.99 at the time. Now it would be like $5 probably, if even that. But because, I'm probably one of the only last persons to watch DVDs, because when my internet service isn't working very well, I go back to my DVD collection.
Well, I watch DVDs too. Like, I have a mini DVD player that is like a portable DVD player. That's my prized possession right now. And I don't have a TV in my room. I don't know if you've noticed when I showed my room that there is no TV in here. Because I don't want a TV on the wall, because it would have to go where my glitter wallpaper is, and that would totally mess it up. And so, I have I either watch things on my phone or like I have a little DVD player, but there's a TV in the other room that has like Prime and Netflix and all that stuff on there. So
right.
but no, I only have very few DVDs right now. I have like a lot of Lifetime movies. And then I have this movie called Paradise Hills with Emma Roberts. It's awesome if you haven't seen it. Anyways, that's
okay.
So continue. Sorry, your story.
No, you're good. You're good. Yeah, no, love for the DVDs out there that we still own and love. I've got too many still. But so anyway, I started thinking about this story again, and I got reminded of it, oddly enough, because our friend, your and my friend, Jenny, and her daughter were over one time, and Moon was in my room. She was in my bedroom. She was playing around, and she found a couple of DVDs. And oddly enough, this was one of them that she just happened to randomly pull out.
Mm.
And I said, "Oh my God, how weird!" She pulled out the ghost collection. I said, "I love this one. You know, it's got this story on it. It's got the haunting that has happened at the Queen Mary.
Mm-hmm.
It's got like a bunch of like the greatest hits kind of ghost stories from Unsolved
Mm-hmm.
Mysteries." So I started thinking about this particular story because, you know, it's from Chicago and was on my mind. But uh, yeah, it was one of the most bizarre and spooky stories that I ever heard on the Ghost series of Unsolved Mysteries. So I just thought, hey, you know, let me look into this a little bit more. I actually had looked at it over the years, but I kind of um, put it aside for a while. I didn't forget about it, but I always thought to myself, you know, that would be a really interesting one to talk about on the podcast because I'm not alone in that. Because if you look up Teresita Basa and her murder, a lot of people are out there talking about it. And there's still actually a lot of theories and a lot of questions lingering as to kind of what happened with the whole thing. So, and also her name is Teresita, which is actually a nickname of mine. It's spelled the same way.
Oh wow.
And people did, yeah, my family did call me that when I was younger. My grandmother did. I have it engraved on a necklace. So it's not really like a personal connection. It's just one of those, you know, coincidence things that I was like, oh, that's her name. That's cool. So,
Mm.
well, unfortunately, not so cool for her because she got murdered savagely. But
Mm.
well, well, just a ironic coincidence. But we'll go on with the story. So, for those that don't know, um, like I said, her story is pretty bizarre. If you want to get the, you know, Unsolved Mysteries dramatized version of what happened, I definitely would recommend watching the episode. You can just Google it, and I think there's a clip of it on YouTube. But, um, you know, if you are lucky enough, like I am, to own that DVD collection, you can watch the entire episode. But it really does a great job of providing the most information on what happened. And even the co-creator of Unsolved Mysteries, the series, he said that Teresita Basa's murder still ranks as one of the show's top 10 creepiest cases ever profiled.
Mm.
So that's a pretty big deal, right? Um, so let's get started with the case. It almost went cold, and there were definitely mysterious circumstances that surrounded it. And I think the biggest question after you hear all of what I'm about to tell you is, do you believe the paranormal aspects of this case?
Mm.
And do you think that they are true? Because there's a big question mark to all of that. Of course, me being me, yes, I believe the paranormal aspects are true. But there's some doubts there. You know, there could be some doubts if you look at it very skeptically. Uh, so, anyway, let's go on. Teresita was born in the Philippines in 1929. She graduated from Assumption College in Manila, and then she moved to the United States in the 1960s to study music at Indiana University, and she got a master's degree in music there. So her whole life, she was a great student and she was very focused on music. But at some point, after she moved to the United States and got the master's degree in music, she kind of put that to the side for a moment and she went on to find work as a respiratory therapist at Edgewater Hospital on the north side of Chicago, actually not very far from where I used to live in Andersonville, right before I moved to LA. So, and Edgewater Hospital has a pretty interesting background as well for any Chicagoans out there or anybody who's interested in this story, Edgewater Hospital was the birthplace of Hillary Clinton and John Wayne Gacy.
Oh,
And
wow.
it was, yeah. And they also said that Frank Sinatra apparently was a patient there at one time.
Mm.
So the hospital no longer exists. It was raised not that long ago, actually. It was raised like a few years ago, but it was left empty for like years and years. Like when I lived in Andersonville, I could drive by it and you would see that there was just this humongous hospital structure, but nothing was happening inside. And that was because the hospital actually closed in a very disreputable way because they found out that all of these schemes had been going on, like related to fraud and malpractice and just a bunch of scandals. So if you want to know more about that, definitely look up Edgewater Hospital in Chicago and you can find out more about that. But focusing on this story, I just thought it was interesting to add that little bit of background that the hospital itself was just not considered such a good place after a while. So kind of sketchy stuff happening there. Now today it's condos. So I don't know though. I'd be careful because some shady stuff went on inside of that place. So if you're living in the condos today, I would probably be interested to see if there were any supernatural or paranormal things happening. Probably have already happened to some people, I would imagine. So anyway, just an interesting side note. But back to our Teresita. She lived in a high-rise apartment in Lincoln Park. So not very close to Edgewater, but this was in the late 70s. It was Lincoln Park, a very neighborhood, considered very nice neighborhood today. I'm sure it was then too. It really hasn't changed that much, to be honest with you. But anyway, on the night of February 21st, 1977, she would be found nude, murdered, and also a strange victim of arson inside of her own apartment. So the firefighters were sent to her apartment after the neighbors noticed smoke coming from her floor. And when they got there inside, they found her nude body with a butcher knife stuck inside of her chest. And she was buried underneath a smoldering pile of clothes and a mattress. So all of this was burning on top of her. And yeah, the rest of her apartment was totally burned. So due to the nude body being found, the investigators at first thought it could have been a sexual assault crime as well as everything else. But when they conducted that autopsy, they had nothing to confirm that this was the case because there was zero evidence of any kind of sexual assault. It's just that her body was found naked. Her apartment had been ransacked and it did appear as though a struggle had occurred. The apartment was just kind of in shambles. And I did see, you can look it up, if you're interested, to find pictures of everything that happened. The best place for the pictures that I found was from it's another podcast that started on, they wanted to talk about things that happened at the old Edgewater Hospital. So the podcast is called If the Walls Could Talk. And that's a fairly new podcast. And it was just started up, I think, a couple of years ago. I had been following it for a while because, like I said, I was interested in this case and everything that happened. So if you go to their website, you can see they have some very good pictures of what the inside of Teresita's apartment looked like after the fire, and some other pictures that you may be interested in. So go to that website if you're interested in that. So where was I? Yeah, due to the extreme damage from the fire, unfortunately, the investigators could find few clues, but they did find one clue that was not very interesting to them at the time. They kind of discounted it, but it would become very interesting later on. So Teresita kept a little journal or a diary in the apartment, and inside she had written the words, "Get theater tickets for AS," initials AS. But
Hmm.
that's all it said. So they didn't know who AS was, if it was a person, if it was, an event, whatever it was. But like I said, they didn't make much of it because that was literally the only clue that they had to go on, because the
Hmm.
apartment, like I said, was so badly burned, and they couldn't make any connections as to what might have happened. So with no real leads to go on, her case went cold for about 6 months. They didn't have any information. But 6 months later, in August 1977, the detectives were hopeful that they finally got a break in the case because they received a tip from the nearby Evanston Police Department. Evanston is just north of the area that Teresita was living in, or I'm sorry, that the hospital was in Edgewater.
Hmm.
But Evanston actually is like where I grew up. It's like Oak Park. It's more of a suburb of Chicago to the north,
Hmm.
so it's not actually Chicago. But anyway, they got the tip from the Evanston Police Department uh, that a man named Dr. Jose Chua and his wife, Remibia, and she was called Remy for short, that they had shocking information on who may have killed Teresita. So this is the point in the story where the case gets pretty creepy. Um, Jose Chua had told the police that Remy had been experiencing strange paranormal episodes, that a few times now, Remy had apparently been possessed by the spirit of Teresita Batha. And this is
Hmm.
the part in the story where, if you're watching the Unsolved Mystery episode, like I was when I was super young, it's where you get completely creeped out because they show the reenactment of it happening. And it's just really weird, of course. I mean, in the best way possible, if we are all into this type of thing, which most of us are, if we're listening. But it's it still creeps you the F out. Um, so the first time that it happened, apparently Remy goes to nap, but she winds up having dreams of Teresita visiting her and telling her important information about exactly who killed her, how, and why. And she would have this episode, Jose said, and she would go into this trance like state, and she would begin to speak in Tagalog, which, if you don't know, that is the native language of the Philippines. So
Yeah.
it was, I guess, Teresita, obviously being directly from there, she would speak it
Hmm.
along with English in her everyday life. But Jose said that Remy knew some Tagalog, but she didn't know enough to speak in the complete sentences the way that she was speaking, and that it also didn't sound like her. Like the voice sounded completely different. And
Hmm.
so he was totally bewildered. He didn't know what to make of this. Um, and when she was in the trance at first, she was quoted by him as saying to him, his wife was saying to him, but as Teresita, "Doctor, I would like to ask you for your help. The man who murdered me is still at large."
Wow.
Yeah. And then um, her spirit was supposed to have gone on to say that Alan, a man named Alan Showery, was her killer. So think back to the notes that they found inside of her journal, her diary. It
Oh,
said,
yeah.
get theater tickets for AS. AS is probably Alan Showery.
Mm-hmm.
But nobody had any idea of any of these details or how they fit in or made sense with anything. And then after the first trance that his wife went into, um, Jose Chua said that when his wife woke up, he told her about this and that she was just like kind of blank face, like she had no idea what had happened, um, and that she couldn't provide him as to any explanation why she said the thing she did or what had happened. So that's pretty creepy, right? So Jose, he, like I said, he was bewildered. He just didn't know what to make of it all. And he would give this testimony that I'm about to quote to you at a pretrial hearing. He said, I was really surprised and scared when I asked her name and she answered, I am Teresita Basa. But she told me I had nothing to be scared of. She was really pleading for me to help her solve her murder. So,
Wow.
Jose, yeah. Jose was just, he really didn't know what to do because being a doctor, being a medical doctor, he was extremely skeptical. And of course, he didn't want to believe it.
Mm-hmm.
And he just didn't know what to do. So at first, he ignored the spirit's pleas until about a week later when Remy became possessed again. And at that time, the spirit was angry with Jose that he had not contacted the police yet. And Jose said he couldn't believe what he was doing, but he, tried as best he could to compose himself and talk to this spirit. And he
Mm-hmm.
said, well, I don't feel comfortable going to the police because I don't have any proof of anything that you say that this happened. Um, and the spirit said, well, that's okay. I can give you proof. Don't worry about that. So at that point, the spirit through Remy said that Alan had stolen jewelry from Teresita's apartment and given it to his girlfriend after all of this happened. And that she even went further to go on and say, well, I can provide the names and the phone numbers of the family members who can confirm that this jewelry was stolen from me.
Oh,
They'll be
wow.
able to identify it. Yeah. So that's what he claims that she said. So after that, Jose said to himself, okay, well, I feel like I can finally go to the police now. I have something concrete,
Mm-hmm.
physical evidence, physical proof that I can share with them. And I know this story seems really crazy and really out there, but maybe they'll believe me at this point. So he did, like I say, go to the police with the information. And of course, when the police were presented with it, yes, they obviously thought it was bizarre. But when they presented it to the detectives in Chicago that had been working on the case for months, those detectives were willing to at least follow it up because, like I said, they had nothing else to go on. So they thought, well, maybe, let's see what happens. So they followed up with it. They found out that Alan Showery was an orderly who worked at the Edgewater Hospital. And he also worked in the same department as Rosita Basa.
Mm.
And actually, Remy Chua, the woman who claimed that Teresita possessed her body, she also worked in the same department as Teresita. They were both respiratory therapists, although they weren't really known to be friends or even acquaintances, just that they kind of worked in the same department. So,
Mm-hmm.
anyway, something interesting to note. But for Alan Showery, allegedly, Teresita knew that he was kind of struggling really financially in a lot of ways. So she was said to be giving him little jobs to do and then kind of giving him these very generous gratuities as a way to say thank you. So he was kind of doing odd jobs for her, it sounds like. And the night that she was murdered, apparently he was going over there to fix her television set. He told her he could do that. And he says he told the police at first that when he got there, he went to go be ready to fix the TV set, but then he didn't have the right tools with him. So he had to leave the apartment. And he said that when he was going to come back, that he had intentions to rob her. But he said he never, at first, said anything about, yes, I killed her, it was me. He kind of denied that any of that happened. But he also lived nearby. So that was something that the detectives would find out, that he lived nearby. So it was only after the family members were able to identify the jewelry that was missing. And his girlfriend, Alan Showery's girlfriend, confessed to the police that, yes, I have received jewelry from him pretty recently. And he told me it was a late Christmas gift. And like I said, the family members identified it was a jade pendant and this pearl ring. And they said, oh, yeah, that definitely belonged to Teresita. So after Alan Showery heard that that had happened, then he confessed to murdering her. He said, yes, I'm guilty. I did it. And he went on to tell the police, yeah, I took her clothes off to make it look like a sex crime. And then I set fire to further destroy the evidence.
Wow.
So, yeah, he took them through all of it. And then he said he had gone over there to rob her. I'm not sure whether the killing happened because it was just a struggle that they were having, or because he had some kind of, something out for her. It's not very clear. But either way, he did go there to rob her. And he was thinking in his mind that he was going to be able to make up his rent money with what he stole from her apartment. Jeez. And in reality, after all of this, stuff that happened, after putting a butcher knife through this woman's chest, she was 47 years old. And after, setting her on fire and her apartment on fire, he only managed to grab $30 from her apartment in cash. So no, he did not make his rent, because even in the late 70s, we know that rent was more than $30. So, but she was said also to not keep a lot of cash inside of her place. Very smart, actually, right? So, he was only able to get that. And then he said he stole the rest of the jewelry to make up for the fact that he couldn't find any other cash. So he was going to try and get money from the jewelry, but then Dum Dum goes and gives it to his girlfriend. So real smart. He's definitely not the sharpest tool in the shed. So the end result of everything was that old Alan here, almost got away with everything when the initial trial was considered a mistrial. The jury was found hung because they didn't know what to go on. There was newspaper lines across the country saying, does Ghost finger a killer? Stuff like that. So you can imagine too, especially, even in today's, even in 2023, that would still be a headline where people would be like, well, am I supposed to believe this or what?
Yeah.
So, back then it would have probably been even more outrageous. So he almost got away with it, but not long after this time, when he was still in prison awaiting a retrial, some people said that the spirit of Bassa visited him in jail. And not long after that, Alan would suddenly change his plea to guilty because he had taken it back. He had recanted his original statement.
Wow.
And they say that, well, now the ghost visited him and now he's coming clean. But people who are skeptical say, well, also his lawyers were telling him that he was going to get a better deal if he agreed to go through with the plea, like he was going to get out of jail sooner. So again, that's definitely one of those questions that's lingering. That's up for you to think about and decide. But you know, he was sentenced to 14 years for robbery, arson, and murder. But sadly, he did get released in 1983, only 6 years after her death. And he supposedly relocated back to New York State, where he was from originally. And I read multiple sources that said nobody really heard anything of him since like the early 2000s. So he kind of just disappeared back into obscurity. So who knows if he, you know, did this to anybody else, but it might have been just a one-time crime of passion type of thing. It seems like, yeah. So this whole story, you know, went on to kind of inspire a lot of things, like not only the Unsolved Mysteries episode, which for me is kind of iconic for all us Unsolved Mystery fans out there. But it also inspired the 1996 television movie Voice from the Grave. I have never seen it, but who knows if it's any good. But you know how those TV miniseries go. They could go either way. Especially in the late 90s. But if anybody out there is interested, I haven't seen it myself. But some other strange things with this case, at least 3 other Edgewater hospital employees apparently reported seeing the ghost of Terabitha Bassa, but none of them wanted to come forward. Now, this was information, that spooked me a lot too. This was information that I pulled from the If the Walls Could Talk podcast. And they have a lot of interesting things on there. So it's interesting because it's that I read that in the Unsolved Mysteries episode that the production team, they wanted to protect the identity of the Chuas, so they gave them a different name in the episode. But why did they really need to do that? They didn't actually, because the Chuas wrote their own book already in 1979, way before the Unsolved Mysteries episode ever aired. And they co-wrote this book with their friend Carol Mercado, and their book was called, much like the TV movie, it was called A Voice from the Grave. And it kind of gave their own account of everything that happened. So if you are interested in finding more about their side of the story and what happened with the possession and everything, definitely check that book out, Voice from the Grave. And I found out some other interesting information about when they were writing that book. Again, this is from the If the Walls Could Talk podcast. They said that the people that were working on the book at the time in 1979, they reported unusual activity at their offices, like mysterious phone calls happening, and also notes flying around the room. So, yeah, that's pretty interesting. It kind of leads me more to, you know, I mean, I wasn't going to be that skeptical anyway, to be honest with you, but it does kind of point me more in the direction of, if those kind of things are happening and people are saying that, then yeah, I really do believe that, you know, her voice was coming from beyond the grave. Why did she chose this certain person to go through who wasn't really even a good friend of hers? I'm not sure, but it was interesting to note that I read one of the detectives that was on the case, Detective Statula was his name. He was super skeptical, being a detective and all. But then he was interviewed by a local Chicago publication about the whole story. And they said, well, why are you putting stock in this story, this crazy story of possession happening? And he said, well, look, you've got to understand that I have interviewed tons of people, criminals, drug addicts, all types of people that I have, not a lot of reason to believe their stories a lot of the time. But he said, I had no reason not to believe this doctor and his wife, who were pretty affluent for the area that they lived in. And not even the affluence, but he said they were well educated and, they seemed pretty shaken about everything that happened. So that's why he said he decided to kind of go along with all of this in the first place. But then I also read that, unfortunately for that detective, for years afterward, he kind of got pranked by his own department. And
I could say,
because, him being a detective and all, they're like, ooh, believe in all this spooky stuff, so they would prank him by, leaving him messages from dead people, different cases, stuff like that. So I guess he kind of got bothered by that for more than a few years. But it's interesting. I mean, to this day, a lot of facts about this case are still open-ended, I feel, especially with regard to the paranormal thing. Like I said, I believe in it, I buy it, but other people are not so concerned, or not as convinced, I should say. And I'll leave you with one spooky fact about the case. So Teresita's remains were flown to the Philippines to be buried, but the cemetery where she's said to be buried apparently doesn't exist. And that's also from the If the Walls Could Talk podcast. So I know I gave a lot of shout outs to that podcast today. I know that they're a newer podcast, so hopefully people will go and check them out. But that's where I got a lot of my information from. Also, the Unsolved Mysteries Wikipedia, and an article from medium.com that was written kind of from a more skeptical point of view. But yeah, that is the story of Teresita Bata and how she, solved her own case, basically, from beyond the grave. I think it can happen. I mean, there's other accounts of stuff like this happening. So,
I want to say that's not even the first time that has happened, because I know there was another story that happened. I want to say, what was it? The Green Briar Ghost? Is that what I'm thinking of?
It sounds familiar. Yeah.
We talked about it on Hollywood's
We did talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it was almost the same concept where this girl was murdered and she haunted, I want to say, her mother or her mother-in-law saw the ghost and was able to testify for the ghost in court,
Yeah.
But,
I mean, I all I have to say is what I usually say to myself: stranger things have happened. I mean, it's. I don't think it's beyond the possibility. And some people were trying to say, from some sources that I read, that Remy herself, because she worked in the same department and she knew Alan Showery, that she didn't like him at all. and that apparently he may have gotten her fired in some way.
Mm.
And I'm not sure what all happened there, but that's one theory that people who are skeptical like to say, well, she may have just happened to know some information that she wasn't supposed to know, and she didn't know any other way to she was afraid of Alan Showery in some way, so she had to come up with a story to kind of get the information to the police. I mean, either way, she obviously had a humongous hand in solving a case that could have gone cold for years, you know. Uh, they maybe would have never been able to find that out. But at the same time, why would you go to those lengths? I mean, unless, you know, you really wanted to, I don't know, kind of get like some kind of fame from it or notoriety or something like that. But I mean, I don't know about you, but like, I probably wouldn't just randomly say I was possessed by somebody just for the fun of it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of risk there,
Right.
you know?
Right.
And
yeah,
you pretty much not going to be taken seriously, but that's pretty incredible. I mean, she did have a lot of details, you know?
Yes, she did. She had like perfect detail. And like I said, I'm not one to disbelieve in this time or place, but yeah, I definitely think that she did get possessed. I mean, I believe that spirits can talk through people. That's why I'm here. but yeah, I just wanted to share that story with everybody because I think it is definitely one of the creepier stories out there. And yeah, if I ever make my way to the Philippines, sure, I would be interested to see if that cemetery doesn't actually exist or not. Even creepier. But poor Teresita, I mean, just by all accounts, just a lovely woman who, like, at the time when she was murdered, she was actually studying to get her doctorate in music. So, you know, and she was said to give piano lessons to the kids in her building or neighborhood, whatever. So, I mean, you know, she obviously didn't ask for any of this. So, at least she could find a conduit to bring her murderer to justice. So, yeah, just that's my ghost tale out of Chicago for the day. So,
awesome. Well, thank you. That was a great story.
Of course.
All right.
I'm glad you liked it.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I'll wrap up the episode. So yeah, thank you all also for listening out there. Shout out to Sarah, my friend, who I know listens to this and everything.
Yay.
She at least tells me she listens. So, you know,
yeah.
I feel like I should shout out her Instagram though, because it's actually pretty interesting. What is it called? Sarah Plans Reads, SARAPLANZREADZ. Sarah Plans Reads, and she does Instagram like photos of books that she's read, and she does like little like reviews of the books, and some of the books are pretty. I learned about Grady Hendrix from her, who is a wonderful horror writer. But yeah, read books. So are you reading any books right now?
Me currently? No, I wish I could say I was. No. I've been doing too much internet reading. Time to read a real book, but
I do audiobooks because I don't really have the capability of sitting down and actually reading a book. I have to be doing like 10 things at the same time.
Right.
So I've been doing the audio books.
Yeah.
And I'm doing one called How to Sell a Haunted House, and it's by Grady Hendrix. It's pretty creepy. It's got like possessed dolls and puppets in it.
Ooh.
Yeah. Pretty creepy stuff. to say the least. The last one I read by him was called My Best Friend's Exorcism, which was also an amazing book. The movie I was not so great about. I did see the movie. It's not so.
Yeah.
The book is better. Of course it is. It always is. But yeah. Shout out to our listener. So yeah. And shout out to everyone else if you're listening. And we appreciate you. So let us know if you have any suggestions for stories. You can email us at myweirdlittlepodcast@gmail.com. Write me on Instagram at Tia is the coolest, or at My Weird Little Podcast on Instagram. Watch my TikToks if you want to know what I wore for the day, and that's about it. Or I think you can message me on TikTok too. I think that's a thing. But yeah, I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Stay hydrated. Drink water, drink coffee, and stay spooky, everyone.
Ooh.